Welcome to the Strap and Link podcast, where we cover brands from their inception to their latest release.
It's the Montress Tudor.
Like I said, better movement, spring drive potentially, Rolex Oyster Perpetual.
Their Superocean heritage.
Now you see this kind of renaissance of Tudor. Finally, in 2016, they achieved the spring drive with an 8-day power. The podcast for watch lovers by watch lovers. New episodes every first and third Monday of the month.
All right, hello, happy Monday, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Thanks again for joining us on another episode. Excited to talk about Breitling watches today. Pretty pumped.
Very.
Really fun brand. I think probably the best looking watches outside of Grand Seiko, dare I say, that we've covered yet. So
yeah, it's one of my favorite brands. Definitely. Very excited for this. I've been waiting on this one for a few weeks now. I know we've hit a couple, brands, lower brands that, much more available, but Breitling's always been a very popular brand in my family and people I know. So I'm excited to tell you guys some more about it and do a little deep dive into it.
yeah, I know you've got a lot more hands-on experience with Breitling. I don't really that much. So interested to hear some of your thoughts there, but yeah, really awesome brand. And I thought maybe it'd be relevant to start with some of the new models that they released or that they've released, I guess, so far this year. So we'll get into some of those, like the top time. They don't actually do watches and wonders anymore. This is something interesting. I think people would like to know. When I was researching, I found out that I think I read that when COVID happened in 2020 and watches and wonders didn't happen at all, that was I think maybe the first year that Breitling stopped, but they don't do it anymore as basically like an environmental, like a sort of initiative. So they do a web release when they do this, I guess, kind of similar timing. And then their boxes, they use like all this like recycled material. So point of that, they don't go to watches and wonders, so we don't get like all of their releases all at once like a lot of the other brands. But just really quickly, some of the new ones, the top time. David, I'll let you talk about this because you said that your dad actually just got one of those, but commemorative of the Ford Mustang, the Thunderbird, the Chevy Corvette, the Shelby Cobra, all with the B01 movement. Really cool watch. Have you seen it yet? Like, have you gotten to wear it yet?
Yeah, my dad actually got the Top Time Deus, which is a very cool watch. It's more the motorcycle version of this. Has a baby blue and white dial with a orange lightning bolt. For the second hand is really, really cool watch. The whole dial itself almost looks like a speedometer, which I think a lot of these kind of take that appreciation from, but this one really looks cool. It has a lighter brown leather strap on it as well, which I think just really pops the baby blue because blue and brown always works perfectly together. Another cool thing that actually came with it, it comes obviously with its own box, a lot of memorabilia. I can never say that word. With it, but it comes with stuff like cards, stickers, things like that. It actually came with a card that says "In Petrol We Trust," which is a cool thing, just heritage of the gasoline motorcycles that this is playing off of. At $5,500 is very cool. I think only 2,000 of these were made. I think it might be that with all of the different Chevys, Thunderbirds, Corvettes, all of the brands, but it's a very cool watch. Seeing one in person, you really get the bang for your buck when it comes to it. These are not cheaply made, fashion type watches. These are very cool. They still have the Breitling standard, even though it is like a memorabilia piece.
Besides the top time, which man, I love those things. That's so cool. I want to get one for my dad, but then I'm like, oh, I don't know. So you can appreciate that the way that I am. I'll probably be buying it for myself. The new Navitimer came out with some additional dial colors, and also the return of pretty cool. But I learned also while researching the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association's wing, basically the symbol or like the logo for Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. They put that back at the 12 o'clock. So a nice little touch there and paying homage to some of the Navitimers of the past. So yeah, that's a couple of the new models that have come out in, I guess we'll say the spring of 2023. I'm sure that there will be a few more to come sprinkled throughout the year. We'll be sure to update those as we get back into Breitling later on. So before we jump into the history section of Breitling, I thought it was fitting maybe to kind of centralize around a theme today of just like, where does Breitling fit in to your watch collection, and when should someone approach Breitling?
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of stands out about some other brands. Very quickly, to me, I think they play a little bit higher price point than what I would probably start out with. I kind of went like the Tissot and then Tudor and then Grand Seiko route, and some bigger brands came in after that. So it was like 7 to 4K to 4,500. Like kind of took these little incremental steps up. Breitling, it's tough to get into around even like the 4,500 mark. You're pretty
Mm-hmm.
much looking at like 5K 5,500 to get in. And some of those are like off the shelf movements. So my thought is, I would probably be saving up for like a Premiere, for example, watch that I'm going to talk about later, which is like 9, 10K. And so I think like for
Mm-hmm.
me, I'd probably be looking at this as like a fourth or fifth watch. And I would definitely be saving up to get a B01 or comparable or, better movement from them, and not and off the shelf like an ETA in some of the Chronomats. So yeah, a little bit later down the road brand for me, I think.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite way, so I'll play devil's advocate here. I think I've made it known in many of the podcasts that we've done. I'm more of a brand snob. I like to know, hey, I have an Omega, I have a Rolex, I have a Breitling. And I kind of want to phrase this question back to you, Brett. What now, excluding Patek, AP, all the big names, Richard Mille, all those, what is your top five, three, four, five brands that everyday people would realize? And to me, I'm Rolex, I'm Omega, and then after that, it has to be Breitling if you want to run in that crowd. Which
Yeah.
makes me think, okay, well then this might be, if you're not wearing, I get it if you only want to buy Rolexes or you only want to buy Rolex and Omegas, but if you're saying I want to watch from each, brand, this would have to be my third or fourth watch I would buy if I'm buying one of
Yeah.
each. Obviously I have a Grand Seiko and I have other stuff, but I'm just thinking of, somebody that just cares about those flashy brands. I think Breitling's really made the case that they're one of the top, definitely top five, and in my opinion, probably top three when it comes to being recognized on the everyday. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that they are up there. I mean, I would put them, if you exclude, like you said, AP, Patek, yeah, I would put them at like 3 in terms of being recognized by like an average person or a watch,
Mm-hmm.
enthusiast as well. So yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
they're up there. I just think from the sense of like, if I'm building out a collection, and like whether I have like a certain affinity for Breitling or not, I'm more along the lines of like, when would it make sense if you're starting at like watch one? Obviously
Mm-hmm.
people have got different budgets, right? If I make 3
Yeah.
million a year, then it's nothing to start with like an AP. Right? Like I would love a Breitling as my first watch for
Mm-hmm.
sure, but I think the people that may, without some like predisposition to them, right? Like if they didn't have like a close family member that had some, or if they haven't been sort of into watches from like a younger age, high school, junior high, or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. I think for that kind of person, it's maybe a little bit less attainable, right? Like
Yeah.
people probably aren't
Well,
going to spend 5 grand on like their first big boy watch. They might spend 2 grand on
exactly.
like a Longines or
Yeah.
something like that.
Well, what I was thinking is like, somebody that wants to spend that much money on a watch, probably, unless they're just denying it to everybody else or they're denying it to themselves, they're going to want a Rolex. And if you're
Yeah.
already at 7, 8 grand, shit, I mean, go ahead and save an extra 2, 3 grand and buy the
Yeah.
Rolex. And then this would be a great second watch. Now that's kind of, I get
Yeah.
it. If you're spending that much money and you really care that much about watches, 9 times out of 10, the person's going to want a Rolex, and you're spending almost, aftermarket Submariner prices
Yeah.
that you could get. So I get that, but definitely I think second, third, I'm with you on that. I think it could be a great second or third brand you get, right there
Yeah.
under Omega, right under Omega, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I would love to be the guy that, his first watch is a Breitling. Sadly, I don't make that kind of money to start off at that point. But I know we're about 10 minutes in, so we'll hop into the quick and easy history of Breitling, and then we'll jump into the current collection. At this time, we want to thank our listeners and our new followers. We certainly do appreciate you for joining the show. We'd love if you could rate and subscribe, maybe give us a review, or simply share maybe your favorite clip or your favorite episode to your social media accounts and tag some friends that might also be interested. We will be doing a giveaway soon, probably a watch spinner or something similar. So around May and June, be sure to stay in touch with the show to get in on the giveaway. We also want to thank our followers who suggested watches for this Breitling episode. Continue doing so, and we will certainly do our best to make sure that we cover the models that you all request. And if you don't already, give us a follow at Strap and Link on Instagram, TikTok, and now on Reddit. Message us there or just get in on the conversation with Reddit with any questions that you might have and watches that you want to hear discussed on upcoming episodes. We'll be sure to fit those in whenever we can. And now, let's get back to the show. Yeah, we're going to start back in 1884. Founded by Leon Breitling, the company stayed in the Breitling family for quite some time, but founded in 1884, and then in 1892, Leon officially transformed rather his workshop into a full factory where they could then design and then actually produce Breitling watches. A year later, in 1893, Breitling patented a movement with a power reserve of 8 days. That year, he also introduced the pulsograph, which measured a patient's pulse. Within a decade, the company had sold more than 100,000 chronographs and stopwatches, and by 1914, Gaston Breitling succeeded his father and began focusing on wearability, which led to a year later creating one of the first wrist-worn chronographs with an independent pusher at the 2 o'clock position. And yes, that pusher was rectangular in shape, which is what we see still in the premiere of Breitling today. So nice little piece of homage to some of the first ones. At just 19 years old, Willie Breitling took the helm of the family business 5 years after his father Gaston had passed away. So still within the Breitling family. Willie is responsible for the 4 o'clock chronograph pusher position, which at that point they were using to reset the chronos back to zero. And in 1938, Breitling founded an aviation department. And so, of course, this really, really helped to shape what Breitling would eventually become. And so the aviation department is founded, and they're basically responsible for testing and measuring reliability for pilots' watches. And so this included temperature testing, vibration stress testing, as well as like radio electrical like measures and things like that, of course, to make sure that there's no, magnetic, issues within the watch. And shortly after that, the British military actually placed a huge order for onboard chronographs. So they sought out to make some military instruments, and that was exactly what they did. And of course, this is still seen in the Breitling branding and in their logo today. Of course, they've got a lot of aviation heavy and aviation focused models still in the current collection. After debuting the premier lineup in 1943, Breitling added an elegant but, of course, useful complication to the line in 1945 called the Datora. This could actually read the date, the day, and the moon phase at the 12 o'clock position, annual calendar, which is where we typically see moon phases. So pretty neat little watch there, the Datora. To wrap up here for me, in 1952, Willie Breitling set out to develop a wrist-worn chronograph that would allow pilots to perform all necessary flight calculations, including average speed, the distance traveled, fuel consumption, and the rate of climb. His idea at this point was to adapt the chronomat for aviation purposes and also to integrate a rotating bezel. 2 years later, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association that we mentioned earlier, this is the largest pilots club in the world, they announced the design as their official timepiece. And thus, the Navitimer, combination of navigation and timer, was born from Breitling. And fun fact, really quick, before I hand it over to David, this actually initially wasn't even released to the public. I think Breitling created this watch and they got it into this pilots club. It took off with huge success and popularity, and then they decided to mass produce the watch, basically. And of course, we still have the Navitimer today, so pretty cool.
25 years after taking over, Will decided the time had come to develop a dive watch, and so the Superocean was born. Around this time, Jacques Cousteau was a very popular figure, so Will capitalized yet again on this opportunity at hand, and a legendary dive watch was born in 1957. They initially offered a classic and sport version, depending on if a user wanted to be technical or just really use this for a daily wear at the beach, which I think is really cool because normally you see, tutors and things. We're just a technical watch, we're a workers watch. So this is nice that they recognize some people might wear this just for the look alone, which was different. In 1983, Breitling helped secure the comeback of mechanical watchmaking following the quartz crisis by securing the official bid for an Italian jet team and designed a chronograph that used the rouleau bracelet, which we all now know as the staple of the current Chronomat watch. And in 2001, Breitling was one of the only brands making their own movements. And finally, in 2009, Breitling introduced the 01 movements, which was their first fully in-house movement that Brett's talked about a few times already. Since this, Breitling has re-released and updated a lot of their lineups, including the Chronomat, the Premier, and the Navitimer, which are all now staples, along with the Superocean that we know today. Yeah, so then let's hop on over to a couple of the collections that me and Brett both like and talked about. I know we kind of had to fight a couple times just to pick out what collection each one would talk about because we both love a bunch of collections here, so we had to kind of negotiate which ones we would cover. But for me, I'm always into the dive watches, as I'm sure you've noticed on a few of these podcasts. So I went ahead and took over the Superocean and the Superocean Heritage, which are some watches that I think would be my Breitling purchase whenever that time does come.
Mm-hmm.
The Breitling has two different approaches to their dive watches, the Superocean and the Superocean Heritage. The Superocean collection is meant to be their more tactical dive style. This is a sportier look than its counterpart, the Heritage. The website even boasts that you can wear this while surfing or you can wear this at the beach bar at night if you want that more sporty look. It's a very beautiful watch, kind of toned down. They actually came out with the Superocean 2. I think Brett heard about this as well, with just some more modernistic styles and different colors. Navy, black, white, of course, their famous yellow that I think Breitling's really known for. And they even hopped on the light blue dial train with some of their new releases. As we all know, everybody wants to do a light blue dial nowadays. Yeah, I actually saw an older version of these at the AWS meetup. It was actually a white dial with a navy blue hour markers, and it was just beautiful, very toned back. It had a rubber strap on it, something that really made me want a Superocean.
Yeah, I think one of our friends that was at a wedding with us last weekend also has similar, if not actually identical model, and it pops like the white dial. It's very clean, very clean.
Yeah. Yeah, the good thing about these two is they really let you mix and match your bezels and your dials on these newer ones. So you can actually do like a blue dial with a black bezel or vice versa. So you can really customize again. This website, Breitling's website, is very easy when it comes to customizations, which obviously I like just because the fact you can sit there and just play around, even if you're not wanting to buy one, be like, oh, I wonder what this looks like. You can easily click and mix and match different straps, whether it's a rubber or a link bracelet, as well as different bezel colors. Yeah, the Superocean Heritage is actually my favorite of the two. This really brings an elegance to their dive watches, which I don't think is really replicated anywhere else. Most people, if you don't like their dive watches, you're out of luck because they really only do one version and one look at their dive watches. But with this Heritage, it actually has a glossier look than the original Superocean. So it's much more dressy. And you can include this with a rubber or a link bracelet, a kind of a metal. I don't even know if I want to call this a link. It's more like a metal mesh. Yeah, it's very cool. One little nitpick, I guess, if you even want to have this, when you do buy one of these watches, I was talking to an AD. They'll actually with the rubber, they'll actually cut the rubber to your specific measurement. So there's no fluctuating in wrist size too much, or it's not going to be able to fit. It's kind of different, but they'll actually cut the rubber to your specification of your wrist size. So if you're ever going to buy one of these with a rubber strap, I would definitely recommend going a little bit bigger, for summer, winter, just purposes. Just keep that in mind if this is ever something you see in store and want to hop on. A good thing again, these watches do come in a bunch of different sizes. They come in a 36 millimeter, a 42 millimeter, 44 millimeter, and then a 46 millimeter, which really pops on the Breitling standard of having big faces that Breitling's kind of known for.
Yeah, the rubber strap is, I think they probably tend to keep that pretty long, or pretty like loose fitting, I guess. So they I think they cut it down to where you probably have to go like midway, at least like the middle notch, if not even like one notch further, so that if you do grow, or like obviously like summer months, they don't want it that tight. Because I know my friend that's got one, he told me he had to go back after initially
Hmm.
having it cut and have it cut again. So I think they do
Really?
start it on
Okay.
like, yeah, which I
Kind of
mean, it
safe than
makes
sorry.
sense.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, the cool thing about these are the push button clasp on the bottom, so it really with Breitling insignia on that as well. So it's not just like a too sporty of a look of a rubber strap. It has again a metal. If you get one with rose gold, which is my favorite, a blue dial with rose gold hour markers, and it'll actually have the bottom clasp as rose gold as well. So it's really highly well done. I think, in my opinion, they offer this in green, black, blue. Breitling's green, I think, is one of the most pretty deep greens you can ever probably purchase out on the market. I know we talk a lot about different shades of green, and some are beautiful, some aren't. But if you like a deep green, you definitely want to see this in person. I think everybody that's actually seen this green is actually blown away by just how pure and beautiful it does look. So if you like green watches and specifically green dive watches, this would be something you might be interested in. But my personal favorite is actually the blue, blue and rose gold. This again, like we were talking about earlier in the podcast, is going to run you a little bit more expensive. This is around 6 to 6,500. Depending on if you get the metal bracelet or the rubber. I like the versatility of the rubber bracelet because you can dress that up or dress that down very easily. Just because the gold does dress it up, but your rubber strap dresses it down, so you can run that really with anything you're wearing, which I think is really cool. The last thing I do like about these watches are they offer them all in actually chronometer dials as well. So you can have the different little sub dials in the face if you do like that. If you like something maybe a little bit busier, if you like something more simplistic like myself, I would just go with the normal diver type style watch. It's very beautiful.
Yeah. I was going to say the clasp sort of coloring, which is really nice.
Hmm.
The way that they pair that up with like the hour markers, basically like the secondary color on the dial, is really nice.
Hmm.
My friends on the navy rubber with a white dial,
Hmm.
that one has, I believe, just a stainless steel clasp because obviously they don't want to put like white on there. But the contrast is what's really nice because all these rubber straps are dark. They're black or
Hmm.
I think on the green dial, it's got a black bezel and a black strap, and then on the blue with a blue bezel and a navy strap, and then with the white
Yeah.
dial is also navy as well. So all the straps are dark. So yeah, like having that clasp be in like the rose gold color or a stainless steel or something like
Hmm.
that to pair it up, it just adds some contrast
Hmm.
and it just makes it feel premium. I know we have some aftermarket
Yeah.
rubber straps for our black bays, and that's something that I really wish that you were able to incorporate, even if it's just like the OEM clasp that comes on a Black Bay 58 bracelet. Even that would be nice, but some kind of
Hmm.
deployant. It just makes
Yeah.
there's such a difference in like quality and feel and look
Oh yeah.
between just like a T fit and then a deployant. Yeah.
Hmm. Definitely. I think those are always becoming a must, especially if you're spending this much money. You need a
Yeah.
good, sturdy deployment right there, and that's the one downfall of us doing those rubber bracelets that I think we both have on our tutors for the summer. Is
Hmm.
there's no deployment, but hey, once we make it through the summer, we'll put back on the other ones, and then we'll have our deployments back.
Yeah. The last thing I was going to say, piggybacking off of your Superocean Heritage section, the sunburst pattern on the Heritage specifically, the Super Oceans
Hmm.
have like the brighter dials, I believe, and then the Heritage I think is where they're sticking to like the darker color dials. But the
Hmm.
sunburst effect on those is, I think it's like second to none. I think Breitling have
Hmm.
absolutely crushed the sunburst, just like the brush color. Sorry, I'm choking up a lot today, but I think Breitling have like mastered that over anyone else. The green, like on the left and the right, or just straight up and straight down, it looks green, and then on the other two areas, it looks black, and the same with the blue. In two sections, it's like a light
Yeah.
blue. Other two sections, it's a really like deep blue. So that's just goes to show like how well that the brushing and the sunburst pattern that Breitling do has done, because it really changes up the entire
Hmm.
the entire dial perception, I guess. So
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of the most popular parts of their heritage collection.
yeah, and then I know you mentioned it early in that section, but yeah, dress up, dress down, it's perfect for that too. So
Mhm.
Yeah. Anything else on Superocean?
Not really. I mean, that's really it. There's, like I said, it's very different. I think to have such a different, style between two diver watches within the same company, but I think it's perfect where, hey, if you're all day working, not quote unquote working, but, in a sportier section, you're always at the beach, you're always, at a ballpark or something. I definitely think the just Super Ocean would be the perfect fit for you if you wanted a diver watch. But if you wanted more elegant, nighttime, nightlife watch, I think the Heritage really covers both. So that way you can have a diver's watch as well as having a dressy watch. So I think it was very smart of them to increment both. And again, I know we talked about the green, but also the yellow dial. Breitling's known for their yellow dial
Mm-hmm.
watches, and they really have a beautiful deep yellow on their Super Ocean dials.
Yeah, I find myself every time I dig into Breitling or go into a store and look at them, I find myself really getting drawn in. I think the barrier entry is a little bit high, which is probably the sole reason that I haven't gotten one yet. But yeah, I mean they make some of the
Mm-hmm.
best looking watches. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes just like
They make some
purely,
crazy ones as well. We're not going to sit here
yeah,
and blow smoke up your skirt. We've all seen the 46 millimeter crazy,
yeah.
funky dials, but most of them are, very
Well,
beautiful.
hey, Rolex made the emoji jigsaw puzzle
There you
day
go.
date.
Very good
So
point.
Breitling can have their 46 millimeter, but like I said, top of the episode, them and Grand Seiko, when it comes to just purely aesthetics, the way that they do the
Mhm,
sunburst styles, the way that they pair up colors and contrasting the strap and the clasp with just all the little nuances, beautiful. Yeah.
mhm,
Cool. Well, I'm going to talk about the Premiere. If we're done with Super Ocean, we'll jump over there. Any last
mhm.
Super Ocean or jump into Premiere?
I think that's it. Listen, I'm excited for the
Okay.
premiere. This is one I know I wanted to do, but I knew if I was going to get the Super Ocean, I would have to give him the premiere to talk about because these are the two most beautiful Breitling watches, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah, fully agree there. And yeah, this was the first brand I think that we actually did tussle back and forth on different models.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
finally kind of struck like similar patterns here. But yeah, the B01, the Premier B01 chronograph. I also like that they throw B01 into the full model name to let you know, hey, this is our in fact badass in-house movement. So let's go over
Hmm.
some specs really quickly. I am talking about, of course, the BO1 chronograph, but there is a red gold case. So I do want to distinguish that there are steel options. There's also this red gold. As far as I know, red gold is just Breitling's sort of rose gold branding. So when you hear red gold, think of rose gold. So 18 karat rose gold / red gold on the case. 10 bar water resistance, 42 millimeter case diameter. So it's not going at the 44, 46 dive style, but also not kind of conforming to like the more modern, maybe 40
Hmm.
41 millimeter. 13.6 millimeter case thickness and a 70-hour power reserve from that B01 caliber movement, which again is in house. That is COSC certified. Nice thing about this movement, and this movement being in this watch specifically, is that previously this had an ETA movement. So similar to the Longines episode, off the shelf from ETA, but Breitling doing some adjustments to that. So it's really nice to see that the Premier getting that in-house movement, which is certainly an upgrade. Framed date window at the 6 o'clock and beating at 28,800 vibrations per hour. So the red / the rose gold model is going to be 20,200 US, but then just 91. I know I say just, but 9,100 only in comparison for the steel models.
Hmm.
Excuse
That's
me.
a big drop off.
I would assume that, I
Double the
mean,
price is kind of
it,
crazy. Yeah. I mean, normally
yeah.
you see, a few thousand, 2, 3, 4 thousand, but 10,000 is pretty big
What?
drop off.
Well, I think like off the top of my head, I mean the Black Bay 58s, for example, those are 38, 3,900. I think the like the
Hmm.
yellow gold is, I think it's like 14K. So I
Not the
mean,
John Deere.
yeah, I know, right? John Deere. We're not going back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean this is probably, I think, right up there with the Super Ocean and the Heritage. I don't really have a preference there. I love both of those actually. Right up there with my favorite
Hmm.
one from the Breitling lineup, and then from all of the brands we've covered so far, this one is probably my favorite dress / sport watch that we've covered, where you've got
Hmm.
a sport function, but you throw it on a croc strap and boom, it becomes dressy, right? The rose gold completely accentuates that too. So I mean, it's really like it's very sporty and it's very dressy, and they're just smashed in together, and it's like perfect. It nothing looks out of place. It's very well balanced as well.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's really it's crazy that it's so dressy. I agree with you. It's a beautiful dress watch with the elegance of the hour just numbers on them. If you look
Yeah,
at it, it's very, very elegant. But it's crazy that they have it looking so elegant, but they still have their tack meter around the
yeah,
edges with all the little small ticks and functions that us normal people would probably never use, but they still fit it in. Breitling's known for that. They fit that into their dress watch, which I think is beautiful. But it's crazy that it is that dressy, but they
yeah.
kept their own little style and flair to it, so it doesn't conform like every other gold cream face dress watch out there.
Yeah, I wore my Grand Seiko tonight because it's the closest resemblance to the B01 Premier on a brown leather or crocodile or alligator strap, anything like that. Very
Hmm.
similar, but Breitling, yeah, I mean, it just works better. I mean, like you said, they've packed in a lot of sport functionality, and it doesn't look like it's forced. It just looks very well. So, and it's cool that it's got a lot of heritage and history behind it too, right? I mean, they set out to make this right after World War II. They wanted like,
Hmm.
basically an elegant but also functional. That was exactly what they were looking
Yeah.
for. Tool watch, but we can wear this out in the evening or something, or we can, wear this to a formal event or gathering or something. And they've just iterated, updated to make that the best, resemblance of what that used to be back in the mid 40s. It's updated now, of course, still perfect. So the heritage design from those twin subdials, instead of sometimes we see three, or actually a lot of times we see three on chronograph. This one just has the twins, and then the date window at the 6 o'clock, which is really nice. I actually like that layout versus the three, especially versus the
Hmm.
three, and then with a date at the four. So I really prefer this model where you've got twin subdials at the 3 and the 9 o'clock, and then date at the 6.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
that's kind of known for Breitling does that. I think with most of their
yeah,
watches, they'll put it at the six, which I think is really cool, and again stands them out from everybody else that puts it at the three.
yeah, exactly. And also the rectangular pushers. I know we talked about that during the history aspect and section of Breitling, but they still have the rectangular pushers, which are nice because it slims it down. It keeps it as opposed to being circular and stuck out, similar shape and design as the crown. So the pushers being sleek, slimmer, I think it just adds to the dress appeal. And also features, like I said a minute ago, steel cases that have got some other dial colors. So they do have like a green, they've got a blue dial, all of that with steel. So you get the same strap. You ditch the rose gold for stainless steel, for a brushed sort of stainless steel. Still looks great. I think the rose gold's better, but again, we're talking 2x the price, or actually over that. So, but absolutely timeless. If this stayed in the collection for another 80 years and they never
Hmm.
made massive changes to it, I think it would still remain applicable. I think it would still be a really really relevant watch for the Breitling brand. So absolutely love it,
Hmm.
and hopefully one day I'll own one of these. It's definitely on a short list. So
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's very beautiful. I know you're talking about 42 millimeters, but I guess to to Breitling, that's small for them. Most of
yeah,
their smaller watches dial millimeters are 42. So I think they did what they could do with that. But I really, like I said, that's all that can be said. It's another beautiful dress watch that has a little bit more going on, and a lot of people like that. They don't like the boring or subdued faces. So I think this would be a good kind of compromise for the both. But that again, the croc strap on it is as beautiful as ever.
there's always going to be a watch that's like brown leather of some type on like a gold, or whether it's plated full rose, yellow, whatever. And then
Hmm.
like the ivory dial. There's always going to be a lot of those watches. I'm wearing one right now. We're talking about one, and then Rolex just released one. Um,
Hmm.
but I think I don't know, like I just feel like long term, I would rather have a watch that's got some sport design and sport function to it. Not that I would
Hmm.
use a chronograph very much whatsoever,
Yeah.
but I think when it gets too formal and too elegant, like the 1908,
Yeah.
I'm just not a guy that needs something that formal and that elegant. That's why I
Hmm.
like this
I
Grand
just
Seiko. It's got a GMT. That's why I like
yeah.
that Breitling. It's got some sportiness to it. So people like, you're not going to look out of place. If you go to a semi-formal work event or something, or like a holiday Christmas party, think of something like that.
Yeah.
You won't look out of place like, oh, look at Brett with this, shiny, fancy, straight up pure dress watch and elegant Rolex. This one's got, yeah, it's got some edge to it, I guess. That's what I'm getting at.
Hmm.
So, yeah, the last thing I was going to say about this watch, I would welcome obviously a 40 millimeter. I think it'd be cool if, a couple years down the road, if they did decide to offer a 40 and a 42. I mean, if they're offering, what did you say, 36, 40, 42, and 46 in the Superocean lineup,
Hmm.
um, it'd be nice to see some of the more dress forward watches be offered in maybe even like a 39, maybe like a
Yeah.
unisex, size there, maybe a 39 and a 42 or a 40, 42. But otherwise, yeah, love it.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, just talking about a busier face. That I'm going to talk about a
Yeah.
watch that really I don't love busy faces, but this might be the one exception to that is the Breitling Navitimer. It's been a staple for Breitling since the 1950s when it came out. Like Brett was saying, supporting pilots all over the world as a true tool piece. He said, they didn't even release it to the public for now at the very beginning, but of course now it is. But it was really built as a tool piece. But with the new design here, this watch has become from a simple tool to really an icon and is very recognizable in all of the world, and especially when it comes to Breitling. This watch is beautiful. It has a simple design, but a busy dial at the same time, which if you haven't seen one of these watches, I don't think you'll really pick up what I'm saying. But it's like the inner part of the dial is very simple, and then the outer, it is very complex. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. Um, I really, I don't want to say I know too much about this collection because I don't. I just really have always loved the look of these. So Brett, you might have to hop in here if you know any of things that I might not know. But I know these watches, they're all offered in leather, metal, and even some in a pink leather strap, which I think is kind of cool. So you can buy one for your wife or girlfriend, whoever. Um, the size differences, I think they also do offer some 36s in these, which would be nice. I think we actually met somebody that had a
Yeah.
one of these, didn't we? If I'm not mistaken, they had just bought one, I think the week prior, and they were very gung-ho about it, loved it, talked
Yeah.
about it all the time.
Yeah. Their pilot watches, I don't love I mean, the Premier, love Superocean, love Chronomat, love.
Hmm.
Navitimer, I really, really don't like. Just an aesthetic thing. It's like the bezel. The bezel's very wide and just that kind of
Hmm.
turning slide, that thing that they've got going on. But yeah, this one's got a lot going on. The minute, I think it's like a minute track. The Navitimer was time elapsed for pilots. That was one of the functions to it. So
Hmm.
part of the bezel is going to be time elapsed. There's some other features in there that I'll never know how to use. But yeah, it's just,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a lot. It's like a chronograph. Like I said, you're probably never going to use it, or at least not often.
The
But I,
chronograph one, I think I'm with you, is way too much. I think when I'm talking about the ones I like is the just simple faced ones
mhm,
with the crazy outsides, but the inside the dial is very laid back. You have the hour marker at the six,
yeah,
but once you get to the chronograph and all that, I'm with you. I think it's a little much, but and especially
yeah,
if you do a bigger size millimeter. If you get one of these in a 46, it's going to be a lot different than if you get one of these in a 42 or even what we saw at the meetup. I think that was
mhm.
probably a 36. Something smaller like that makes it a lot less flashy.
Yeah, the smaller ones it's got to be the way to go. I mean, especially now, right? I mean, you like
Hmm.
these are already big. What just by design, and I mean, like there's so much space between between like the hour markers and the edge of the bezel. There's so much space there, and
Hmm.
because like the way that Breitling designed their bezels are basically like inlaid, so they don't sit on top or outside of the case. I think because of that design, it inherently makes it look a little bit larger because it looks as if the center of the dial, where the minute, the hour, the second hand, and the hour markers are, as well as like the Breitling logo, insignia, and everything, it just looks so much further away from the minute track that's on the outside.
Yeah,
So maybe if they changed
it's
that or something, but it's just a like you can't get away with doing a 44 on that. It would be massive. It would look like a 46.
yeah. It's almost like a concave dial
Yeah,
because the outside's higher and then it valleys into the
it
inside.
banks in. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a slope to it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Which is normally what you don't see in a lot of watches. You see more of a domed look, which means it slopes
Hmm.
down as you go on the outside, where this is opposite. So it's definitely an adjustment period. And as most of these watches, you're gonna either love it or you're gonna hate it.
Yeah.
But I think none more than, especially in the Breitling catalog, than this. Dial face, especially if you do a 46, you're gonna either be like, man, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, or that's so gaudy, I could never
Yeah.
wear that.
Yeah, I mean, it is supposed to be like I guess it's important to remember that, right? Like it is
Hmm.
supposed to be a little bit larger so that it's legible. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, from that perspective, let's give it credit, I suppose. But for me, it's definitely not. I will say, cool thing about the chronograph version, I like that they put the date window at the 6, basically like inlaid to the 6
Yeah.
o'clock position chrono subdial as well. So that's kind of nice. I
Yeah,
like
it's
that they
very
did
cool.
that. And then that one's also
Yeah.
got the new one, or the new one has like the pilot wing insignia. Neither of us can talk tonight.
Hmm.
The pilot wing insignia from the Pilots Club that we talked about earlier on the new one.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, I can definitely see this where like pilots are pretty enthused about this.
Hmm.
And just normal folks are much more likely to go Superocean direction.
Hmm. Definitely. And I think these, again, they're going to be around the 45 to $5,500 mark. For the most part, obviously, you get gold version of these. You're going to keep creeping up here. But my favorite version, which is a white dial with a kind of royal blue hour markers and hands with a royal blue leather strap on it, I think it's 47.50. So it's really not outrageously priced as well, which is nice.
Yeah. 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 Breitling's got some well priced pieces. And then they've also got some kind of like things that kind of make me head scratch a little bit. With regards to pricing, this one has a Breitling, the B01, the in-house COSC movement, I
Hmm.
believe.
Yeah,
Is
it
that right?
does, and
Okay.
so that's really a really good value on the price as well, having that movement. Obviously being one of their most popular designs, I would imagine they would put their best movement in it, and so they did, which is
Yeah.
kind of a cool thing. And to keep it at that 5,000, just under 5,000 mark, is makes it accessible.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about the Chronomat, and that's actually a really good segue because I think, you said the fact that it's one of their, kind of flagship pieces, putting the B01 in there is, I would go as far as to say expected, like if your favorite watch brand's favorite watch was using like an inferior movement, probably head scratch, and then maybe like a cheaper model is using like a better movement. Um, and so that's the segue I want to make because the Chronomat Automatic GMT 40, there's a lot of different Chronomat variations and models. They've got, unisex, some smaller, some larger GMTs, chronos, but we're going to focus on the automatic GMT 40 millimeter today. So 40 millimeter, 42-hour power reserve because it's a Breitling 32 caliber, which is an ETA base movement. It is COSC certified, which is nice. Um, but $5,600 for the base model Chronomat GMT 40. So like it's tough for me, and it kind of goes back to the question that we asked at the top of the show, like when do you approach Breitling and when would I? And this is one of the things that makes it tough is like I really like the Chronomat. I think it's a perfect like, you can wear it day in day out. That can be your daily watch, a beater, some people like to say. But for $5,600, like that's not a cheap, first watch, or maybe it's a cheap like everyday watch depending on what your collection looks like. But for me, it wouldn't be like, my everyday watch is 1700, or like, the Tudor Black Bay 58, 3800. So curious what your thoughts are there. Like 5,600 US, that's not cheap to get into Breitling.
No, no, definitely not. I think the real reason why you would buy this watch, which I like the watch, I love the look of it, but I think that's the reason you buy it. You're not buying this watch because you care
Yeah.
about the movement. You're buying it because you love the bracelet. I mean, it's a sportier, presidential looking bracelet. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's very subdued. I think you're buying it just because of the look. in the name. You're not buying it for anything else. And most people walking down the road, I'd say, even me before this episode, I didn't know what the heck movement was in that watch. You're wearing a
Yeah.
Breitling, you have a freaking good watch on. And I think that's what you're buying it for, is you love just the look of it. So, if you're at that price point and you want a Breitling and that's been your dream watch, you've seen, whoever wearing it on TV or an ambassador, a picture of them wearing it, driving a car as always.
Yeah.
I think that's why you buy the watch. You're not buying this watch if you just really care about their B01 movement, because I think if you're doing that, you're moving to a Navitimer or a Premier or something like that.
Yeah. 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 I'm going to come back to this. I think important to, talk about things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Before we harp on the movement or anything related there, like we said, this is a 40 millimeter Breitling 32 caliber GMT hand isolation. Makes this a caller / an office GMT as opposed to like a true traveler GMT, which isolates the local hour hand. We're
Mm-hmm.
learning more about GMTs and teaching you more about GMTs right here on the Strap and Link podcast. But yeah, I mean, this is a clean, like classic no frills GMT watch. I love the Chronomat. When I was in Holland, walked my jolly tail right into a store. Ma'am, do you have any Chronomats? And was really thinking about buying one. Like, how cool would that have been? Buying one
Mm-hmm.
in the Netherlands on honeymoon. But
And
alas, I
that
did
and
not.
that exact watch is on our Strap and Link Instagram if you want to go see it
It
now.
is, yeah, yeah. So we posted that. I mean, I love the bracelet, and it like if anything, it's actually kind of like a little bit small. I think the 40 mil wears closer to a 39 millimeter in my opinion. Um, the bracelet, one of the big selling points, like besides, I think it looks better than it feels. But I think it's just the way that it's designed, like the way that the cylindrical sort of links are all put in together, as opposed to like a Jubilee bracelet. It has
Mm-hmm.
to be a little bit rigid, so there's kind of like a little rigidity in there to it, but it's not so much that you really notice it. So really nice bracelet. I would give that like a B minus, which is nice because I hate when you like fall in love with a watch and you're like, oh, I love every aspect, but the clasp is terrible or the bracelet is terrible. Black Bay 58 fans know exactly what we're talking about. So it's nice that this watch doesn't have like any one glaring area for like this needs to be improved. It really doesn't have that. The red GMT hand, especially on the white dial, is really, really clean and crisp. They didn't have a white dial whenever I was there. Looking at some, they had the blue, which I believe also has the red GMT hand. The blue, really nice because it's got that sunburst brush dial effect that we talked about on the
Mm-hmm.
Superocean models, which is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. But the red hand on the white dial really pops and stands out. I love how they did that to accentuate the GMT. For me, this watch, like the reason that I would get it, like I said a minute ago, it's the do it all aspect. It is 200 meters, or has rather 200 meters of water resistance. It's 40 mil, so it's not too small, it's not too big. It's on a bracelet, a little bit sporty. It's got like office / professional and personal usability behind it and functionality with a GMT movement and hand. So I mean, like, yeah, like it's a do it all for sure. You don't have to worry about like, oh, like I've got a GMT like my Grand Seiko, but I can't get it wet. It's like 10 bar or something, or 10 meter rather. I think something crazy like that. The big thing to me is I think it's a solid contender for like that entry GMT. It's lower in price than some of the Grand Seikos. It's right around or maybe right above some of the Grand Seikos that I've seen and that I have. Of course, if you're talking like Rolex GMT Master 2, it's going to be of course lower, easier to get than those. Very attainable from what I've seen. Like you can also walk in and you're going to have at least one, maybe even two of the dial colors to pick from on just like a walk-in trip to an authorized dealer. We talked about the water resistance, which is really nice to have. But yeah, I mean, I certainly look at this watch as like Breitling entry. If I'm a big Breitling fan and I want to get into it, I don't have unlimited budget. So let's say that I'm putting 20 or 30% down on the watch and I'm going to finance the rest of it. So now I've got 3 or 4 options here. I'm looking at like a Superocean, a Chronomat, maybe the Premier on steel at 9100 is like the top of the budget, and then the Chronomat's at the bottom. When I look at that and think about it in that perspective, it's got some solid contenders like cheaper brands like Tudor, some from Grand Seiko. We're talking about a Tudor Black Bay Pro or Black Bay GMT. To tie this off and then pass it over to you, David, I just had a quick Reddit interaction the other day on this watch, and someone brought this point up, and I was like, I was already thinking it, and sort of said a similar thing. This is pushing up to some of the higher end models, and then outside of the brand Breitling, you've got the likes of a Black Bay GMT, the likes of some Grand Seiko GMTs, even Grand Seiko GMTs that have a spring drive. So from a technical perspective, you are better off, I think, looking outside of Breitling. But then again, it's a Breitling. It's a beautiful dial. It's an amazing looking watch, and it does it all. So, what are your thoughts there? I mean, just like in general on the watch, like what do you like, what do you not like, and maybe any thoughts on the discussion of value positioned against some other brands?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the biggest thing I like about the watch, and I think the standout of it is the band. It's a sportier presidential look. It's more matte, but it's got those long links like a president on the Rolex has, but in a GMT fashion. With a stainless steel
Yeah.
metal. The dials, I think like I said on our Instagram, is a blue dial. I think they're stunning. I really like the white one, like you were mentioning, the white and red. I think really pops on it. Well, it's really cool looking watch. Like I said, you've got to decide between yourself, whoever is looking at this watch, what the movement means to you. If you're like, hey, I
Mm-hmm.
don't care, I love just the look of it, then by all means do it. It's around the same price as a Superocean. But it's, I think a Superocean, the one I was looking at with a rubber strap and the rose gold, I think was around 6,100, where this one's 56 ish. So it's a little bit less than that, but it's a little bit more than a lot of the Navitimers. So
Yeah.
you've got to figure out style. Style means more than everything, because I promise you the watch is going to work. You're not going to get it and worry like this is a movement watch that's going to break in 2 years. This watch is going to last you for as long as you want the watch, to run. So it really depends on style more than everything. To yourself, and hey, if this is one of your first couple watches, then I promise you your movement's not going to matter to you anyways. That'll start getting pickier and pickier with you when you're on watch 5 or 6 like we are. And then you say, okay, I need something to separate from the last 4 watches I bought, and that's when
Yeah.
that will probably start mattering more to the watch collector than one of their first couple. Because your first couple, somebody's going to ask you what watch is that, and you're going to proudly boast it's a freaking Breitling. It's a freaking Omega. It's a freaking Rolex. And that's what I think you're going to care more about most of the time than a movement, unless you're becoming the watch snob, movement snob that I'm sure
Movement.
we are slowly but surely. And, but, to me, I love it. I love the look of it. I love the versatility of it. Again, you can dress it up, dress it down. To me, I like the watch. It really doesn't have much to say about the movement, in my opinion. I know Brett cares more and really dives deep into these movements, and he'll make sure he knows the movement of any watch he gets.
Yeah. I mean, I will play devil's advocate on the movement side of it because movement snob, I was thinking it right before you said it. So I'm glad that you coined
Mm-hmm.
that. If it wasn't already coined, you heard it first right here. I was thinking about this again, devil's advocate. One thing going for off the shelf movements is that, from like my understanding, I mean, they're easier to maintain and repair. Like, right? I mean, if something did go wrong, because they're more mass produced, and you have to think like they're produced by companies that almost solely make watch movements and calibers, like Breitling and Rolex and Grand Seiko. They didn't start out being like this you know, uh, mechanical watch movement company. They, were marketing companies, and they were building tools that worked for a certain purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Usually mechanical and stopwatches, or wristwatches rather. Sorry, mechanical instruments and pocket watches even, but they weren't like these premier, caliber makers and, things like that. So yeah, I guess important to think about it from that perspective too, right? I mean, your turnaround time could be quicker for like servicing, maybe odds that something goes haywire might be a little bit lower because it's mass produced, and that means that they've perfected it, right? It's the same thing with like a car.
Mm-hmm.
You get the first model year of a newly designed car or a new transmission or engine, and guess what? More times than not, 2 or 3 years down the road, that first model is the one that people don't want. They want to stay away from it because this thing didn't work, or we didn't know that this was broken or something. It took them a couple of years. So it does have that going for it. With that, I think we can move on though from the Chronomat and
Yeah.
get into open discussion, right?
Yeah, I think we had a question from some followers and some different things that we wanted to talk about. So take it off, Brett.
Yeah. Yeah. So someone asked us to just kind of get our take, I guess, on like Breitling becoming more than just a golfer special, or you know, relevant in the world of golf, I presume is what the question was getting at here. For me, at least, I've always perceived Breitling as more of a tool watch brand than anything. Like I've always
Mm-hmm.
understood that I think racing heritage, or at least racing like sponsorship to me, and then diving and aviation heritage has always been very apparent, right? Like you see a lot of these watches, the Navitimers particularly, with those kind of like gradient, light green dials, but complications all over the map, and there's numbers all over the place for start stop indicators and elapsed time indicators and all this kind of stuff. So I've always thought of it as a straight up tool watch. Their flagship
Yeah.
lineups of the Superocean, the Chronomat, the Premier, the Navitimer, very heritage heavy. Um, now that we've, I think, researched it, I think we've solidified that they're very heritage heavy. But yeah, I mean, I'll say, to wrap up there on that thought, on that question, I think it depends on the actual person that's looking at the brand and like how do you perceive it. Because like I said, for me, Breitling always stuck out as like a racing sponsor, and then these tool watches, because I'm a
Mhm.
auto sport fan. So I think if you're a golf fan, maybe, and you see that kind of plastered everywhere, maybe you have that perception, or you're more in like your hands more on the pulse of like certain golfers getting sponsorship, or Breitling sponsoring golf tournaments and things like that, where like Rolex, for example, all over F1. So if someone's like not a watch fan, for example, they might think that the Rolex and the F1 relationship is like the kind of the top most like relevant thing that Rolex is doing, when in reality it's not. It's just how it's been for forever.
Yeah, I mean, to me, we've all been to these ADs, a bunch of different ADs that sell Breitlings, and the
Mm,
pictures that are on the outside of each cases on each watch section. Tudor, Rolex, they all have their own pictures of watches and stuff. Breitling's done a great job, I think, of adding ambassadors of, very popular actors of today's time. Ryan Gosling is one. Adam Driver, which was in some of the newer
oh
Star
yeah.
Warses. He's all these ambassadors they have on these pictures. And what are all these actors doing? In these pictures, they're not playing golf. Do you know what they're doing? I was speaking to
Oh,
you.
sorry. I was like,
We'll redo that again.
wait,
All
do we have
these.
some technical difficulties there, or because I'm definitely keeping this one in the podcast? That's
Yeah, they're
hilarious.
they're all sitting in cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all sitting in cars. They're all driving with their arm out the window, the arm on the side of the car, and wearing a Breitling. So to me, it's always Breitling's been a racing, like you said, they've been a
Yeah.
racing, tool watch. I really haven't seen too many in golf. Really, I know in the Masters and things, every Masters guy that's playing is wearing a Rolex. I think
Yeah.
Rolex is more on the golf side, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying a lot of people don't wear Breitling, or they might have used to, been a Breitling, or golf used to be a Breitling watch, but to me, I don't think I've really noticed that in the later years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was maybe specific to like the Super Oceans. I mean, I could see, dive watch heavy, and especially like Breitling having like a lot of like rubber straps and stuff. So I could see it being useful. Even some of their I forget the name of the lineup in the collection, but the like fully titanium watches that are just like they weigh as much as a feather do. I could see
Mm-hmm.
that being useful, but yeah, I mean, I hope that answered the question. Tanner is who reached out to us, who's a follower and listener. We appreciate you for giving us some feedback and asking some questions here. So I hope that answered the question. I remember also when I was younger, Breitling sponsored I believe, an Aston Martin um, like LMP3 team.
Mm.
So that car it was like kind of a deep green and black with Breitling like wings, and then like the Aston Martin wings as well. So that
Hmm.
always stuck out.
That's cool. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and yeah, to kind of wrap it up here, I mean, we've already talked about like I think just the design language and the aesthetics of Breitling. To me, it's like I mean, it's again, I've said it 2 or 3 times, but one last time, it's right up there with Grand Seiko. I think Grand Seiko still get the nod for me because it's just like the originality, I think, behind Grand Seiko. I don't think anyone will really ever get to that level when you're making like mass produced watches the way that they are, and they're coming out with kind of like new designs and new ideas and taking inspiration from what's around them. But Breitling, I mean, they're right there behind it. You know, they're not doing these like unique and like inspirational pieces, but they just do it better than like everyone else. I mean, like, you know, my date just has got a blue sunburst dial, and like the Superocean Heritage sunburst is, it just blows it out of the water. A lot of different materials, a lot of different size options. I mean, we talked about like GMTs, the Premier being sporty, dressy. So there's a lot to love, a lot of different directions with Breitling that you can go.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Grand Seiko does the year, 75th year anniversary, anniversary styles better, the special
Mm,
edition stuff better. But I think what Breitling does that really stands them apart from that and separates themselves is they'll do that, but with a car. I think what they're doing
yeah.
now with the top tier, that or top time, that is a very cool thing that really, once again, you haven't seen many places. And I think they found their cool niche right there that I think they'll make some money off of. And it's very cool, very different, different color watches for each car. And I know it's very popular because I know a bunch of people that's gotten watches from there. um, but all in all, I mean, the watches I think is a perfectly blend of dress and sport when you're going with Breitling. They have great dress watches. They have really good sporty, and most of their watches are probably more sportier um, tool watches. And
Hmm.
I think they've really made a name. I know we say this a lot. I think this will actually be whenever the time comes I get another watch. This will be the next true luxury watch I get will be a Superocean
Yeah.
Heritage because I was really torn between buying that watch or buying the Grand Seiko Skyflake that I did, but I
I
wanted a
remember.
yeah I had a navy blue um a diver watch, the Tudor. So I was like, I don't want two blue dive watches. I wanted a dressier watch. So I ended up going with the Skyflake. But I promise you that Superocean Heritage blue with the rose gold will be
Yeah.
probably the next, true luxury watch I buy. There might be a Longines or something thrown in there before, but when I'm ready to drop some money, it'll probably be the Breitling.
Yeah. I remember you were very set on it. And yeah, I remember that, you know, there was like a month or 2 month span. We were looking at some different, or just
Mm-hmm.
really just going back and forth and talking like, you know, Breitling versus Grand Seiko. I know that you really wanted your first Grand Seiko though.
Mm-hmm.
And I was that way too. Like when I kind of fell in love with Grand Seiko, it was like, I was like, oh my God, I've got to, like, I've got to like get the first one. You're like, oh, it's got to be a
Mm-hmm.
spring drive. I want the snowflake. And then I was kind of playing that game. I'm like, all right, I want something from this brand, but I can't figure it out. So I know that
Mm-hmm.
Breitling was very similar for you. So yeah, um, I think the Super Ocean Heritage would be a great addition. And I think even if you've got like one or even two like blue dive watches, because it's just so different. You know, I mean, it's a really deep
Mm-hmm.
navy for one. Like the Navy Tudor, I've always said, like, to me, doesn't really feel navy. It's more of like a royal blue, or at least a
Mm-hmm.
blend of navy and royal. So it's got that going for it, where you're gonna have a different shade there. But it's just so dressy almost. It's a
Yeah.
dressy sport watch. Same with the Premier can be said, I think, about the Super Ocean Heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Super Ocean, like if you just, you know, if someone's out there and they're like, all right, I've got maybe like a, you know, maybe let's say a Longines or a Tudor, or I've got like an Omega Aquaterra or something, looking for like, you know, the next piece in a collection. For anyone that doesn't have like a straight up and solid everyday um, tool watch, the Super Ocean, I mean, it's on the top two or three like recommendations. Like if you're looking for a diver, if you're looking for a tool watch, especially if it's your first one, it's
Mm-hmm.
got to be like Black Bay 58's got to be up there, or the 54, whatever, depending on wrist size. Super Ocean or the Super Ocean Heritage, probably a Seamaster Professional and a Rolex
Mm-hmm.
Sub, depending on what you can find there.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for you to get one because, like I said, I really want to get one, and there's not a whole lot of brands that I look at and find multiple collections where I'm like, if I had that watch, it would actually get worn a lot. The Top Time,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's like a memorabilia and like collector sort of edition, I still think I would wear that thing all the time. Like the one
Yeah.
that you were saying that your dad has, the Duace. I know I just mispronounced that, but
Deus, yeah, the
the
Deus.
yeah
I mean,
the
yeah, he wears that
the
thing every
Deus.
Monday to work. He's got that thing on, and ooh,
Yeah, Breitling do all the little details right. I think that's where I was talking earlier, like maybe falling short on movement. I think they make up for it in the nuances, whereas because I could make that argument like, well, if I want a GMT, like I'll go get a Black Bay GMT. They have like in-house movement. It's a little bit cheaper, but the bracelet's not as nice. Like it's nowhere near as nice. Maybe the new T-Fit, with like adjustable or micro adjustment makes up for some of that. But yeah, some of the nuance with Tudor is not there. Where I think with Breitling, the nuance is there. The only hurdle that I kind of see is that it's really just the price. So you've got to be at that point where you're ready to get a little bit bigger of a piece if you're first starting out and you're at that budget. I think you're A-okay. Breitling is the perfect entry watch. If you're someone like me that kind of gradually just graduated to like more expensive watches, like the Breitling would be like my sixth or seventh, but I'd be so happy to get one. So excited for that day to come. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later in the next
yeah.
year or two. I think yours might be a little bit quicker than that.
Yeah, within the next year or so, hopefully. But we'll see. I say that, and then I'm
Yeah.
like, want to save the money and buy another Rolex. There's 50 different things we can do, and that's the fun thing about watch collecting. You're going to change your mind 100 times because I can promise you,
Oh yeah.
before I bought this Grand Seiko Skyflake, I was 100% buying the Superocean Heritage. I was 100% buying the Snowflake. I was 100% buying this watch, and after trying them on and sitting on it, and I sat on it for probably 6 months. You make your decision. So that's the fun, is the searching for it. Once you have it, and it's great to wear. But the fun is the searching and the trying it on and talking about it with your friends, and that's the fun of watch collecting.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. It's all the back and forth. It's like the arguing with yourself and arguing with your wife and
Making sure that
like
she knows it's an investment.
oh yeah. She knows that it's an investment.
Yeah. The
I
problem
don't
is
think it's an
that I keep
investment.
getting told, well, you're never going to sell it, so it's not an investment. Well,
Right.
I could.
Yeah, I could. That's the
Yeah.
thing to remember. So yeah, I
Yeah, exactly.
definitely agree with that. That's the fun. Half the fun at least is the chase. Half the fun is wearing it, having fun, falling in love with it a little bit more every day. So
Mhm.
well with that, are you ready to wrap up? I think
Yeah,
I'm
I
good
think
here.
we're
So
good. Like I said before, leading up, after this episode airs and stuff, I'll post some pictures of the blue Deus that I was talking about on the here. Let you
yeah.
guys see it on Instagram. So make sure to follow us there. Instagram, TikTok, we post on both, pretty much the same thing, but we really appreciate the follow on both, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, absolutely. On Reddit now as well, a little bit more active over there. So all three, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram at Strap and Link. Like David said, give us a follow. Would definitely mean a lot. Feel free to message us if you've got any questions. We like chit chatting. We like hanging out. So don't be afraid to reach out to us there. And then yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode. So everyone have a great rest of your week. A great weekend to follow. A couple weekends, and then we will see you later on May the 15th. Bye.